everybody. My name is Jadwiga Najder, and I will be your moderator today. Really happy to see many of you joining this meeting just before Christmas, but I think that COP topic is so interesting and still fresh in our minds that it really deserves some discussion. And here with me today, we have several people who were in Dubai and were actively presenting their cause and working on the success of COP. So remembering that this has been a great big event, around 85,000 people joined in Dubai this year. We heard many announcements, some of them very polarized ones in the media. I think sometimes it may be a bit overwhelming to understand, was it a success, was it not a success, who is content or satisfied with this COP. So let's talk about this a bit more in depth. So with me today, I have Alice Cunha da Silva, Tiffany Adams, Richard Ollington, who I hope is able to talk very soon, as well as Saikat Das, who will join us in a little bit in around 15 minutes. So let's maybe start from presenting our speakers. Alice, if you can go first.
Sure. Yes. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are, or good morning. I'm Alice Cunha Silva. I'm a nuclear engineer from Brazil. I'm based in Madrid now. I work for Westinghouse as Innovation Project Lead, and Dubai was my third COP. I have been involved with Nuclear for Climate since Glasgow, since COP26. And yeah, I hope we can share a little bit of the experiences that we had and the activities that we had at COP28 this year.
Thank you very much. Tiffany.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Adams. For this year, this was my first COP. I was involved with Nuclear for Climate as their communications lead this year. So that was my role I played. And then professionally, I work for Idaho National Laboratory in the US. As the team lead for nuclear research communications, and excited to tell you more about what we did at COP and also just hear more about other people's impressions.
And Tiffany, maybe if you can say a little bit about the initiative. What is Nuclear for Climate? Just a quick elevator pitch of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nuclear for Climate is a grassroots initiative, and we are focused on educating people about nuclear energy, whether that's the public or policymakers. The goal is to really have a discussion, and that was really the approach that we took, especially at our pavilions. This year we had 2 different ones at our booths. Just talking to people, answering questions, hearing their concerns, and then either providing solutions. Sometimes it was misinformation, and that's what Nuclear for Climate is about. It's also important to know that Nuclear for Climate, although we are absolutely pro-nuclear, it doesn't mean we are anti-renewables. That's also key. We really do believe that together is better, and that was something we focused on as well this year.
And if I may add just on Nuclear for Climate, I think it's very important to mention that it's formed by more than 100 organizations across the globe that believe in the participation of nuclear as part of the climate solution. It was formed after COP21, the Paris Agreement, and today is co-led by IONC, the International Youth Nuclear Congress, with the European Nuclear Society.
Great. Thank you very much for this precision, Alice. Richard.
Hi all, I'm
Richard.
Richard.
Great to see you.
Yeah, glad I can make it. I work at Radiant Energy Group, a consultancy for the energy transition. And this COP, I was helping out the Net Zero Nuclear Initiative, which is the new initiative started up by collaboration between WNA, World Nuclear Association, and ENEC, the Emirati Nuclear Energy Corporation. And we had our main showing in the green zone, or at least the ENEC did. That's where I was. And then there was a WNA stall in the blue zone as well.
Great, thank you very much for this presentation. And as I mentioned, we will have one more speaker joining very soon. I got the news from him that unfortunately in Scotland, all the rails are iced right now, and he's waiting in the train to be able to come home from work. So hopefully, as I mentioned, in those maybe 15 minutes, he will be here and telling us this story of huge storm that he found himself in. But so yeah, let's dig into it. We have quite a bit of experience in COP already. I think all of us worked very hard to access COP and to perform the activities in there. So first, maybe let's talk about the venue and what are the parts of COP. There is Blue Zone and Green Zone. And maybe Tiffany, if you could tell us a little bit about the Blue Zone. This was your first COP, so I imagine the impression it made is still fresh for you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to talk about my perspective of the Blue Zone. So yes, like I said, this was my first COP that I attended. You needed to get a special badge Blue Zone badge in order to attend. So it's not open to the public necessarily. It was, I mean, and actually Alice can probably give more details about who exactly were there and attending. But there were several different pavilions from different organizations, as well as different country pavilions, all putting on their own individual events focused around climate change, climate adaptation, mitigation efforts. Truly, it ran the gamut. I don't know what other details you would like, but I think Alice, maybe if you have some more details about the Blue Zone, it might be helpful.
Yeah, so the Blue Zone is where the negotiations are happening. Is the access to the Blue Zone are for parties, which are the countries. They bring their own delegations, so they give the badges to their government officials and all the other people that they are interested to be part of COP. It's also possible to give badges to intergovernmental organizations, IGOs, and NGOs, which Nuclear for Climate, part of this movement, has several NGOs. They are accredited with the UNFCCC, which is the framework of the Convention for Climate Change. So in order for NGO to be able to have access to COP, they need to be registered in UNFCCC, and they get a quantity of badges to attend COP. And that's how we participate in COP at the Blue Zone. And as Tiffany mentioned, there is a lot of side events and pavilions where the countries have their own pavilions where they conduct events and discussions. The NGOs can have pavilions as well. And in parallel, the negotiations are happening with the discussion of to get to a final document that's coming out of COP. So all of this happens in the Blue Zone, and that's normally where the head of states and the members of Congress and all the politicians and decision makers are during the event.
Great. So Blue Zone, the decision makers, the representatives of different groups of interest, also media. But the second part of COP is the Green Zone. And so you, Richard, as you already mentioned, you were there on the big premises of Green Zone. What is this for, and what was it like in there for COP28?
So maybe to sort of compare the two, Blue Zone is those that are finding a fix, agreeing for a fix on climate change. And the Green Zone, where I was, is everyone that's affected by the fix. So the Green Zone is open to everyone. And there was sort of tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people in the Green Zone over the 2 weeks. A lot of Emiratis, as you can imagine, being sort of the locals, and school kids and expats. So incredibly busy. And within the Green Zone, which is was a massive expansive area in a sort of amazing expo city, which is a really futuristic looking venue. There was several key hubs. There was the energy hub, the clean financing hub, the youth hub, sort of startup zone, and there'll be some other hubs that I've forgotten. And we, Net Zero Nuclear, were in the Energy Hub, and it was great to see a fellow nuclear company in there, as the South Koreans had their amazing pavilion there. And then there was also in the sort of startup or innovation hub, there was a fusion tech company there. So there's 3 showings from nuclear companies in the green zone, which, having been to the last 2 COPs, I think is a record. In Glasgow and Sharm el-Sheikh, not only was nuclear not there, but I also think the green zone wasn't as much of a thing. They were much more scaled down affairs. Whereas now I think it's nice to see that COP is opening up to the public and letting the public see the change that the UN is pushing and the companies that are helping push it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you will agree with me that informing the public about what is happening inside and about all the climate topics is really crucial. And so, from what you're saying, it seems that in this COP it really was a success in communication to the general public.
Yeah, there's a lot of the blue zone people that do come to the green zone. So, as a member of the public, you'll see heads of state walking around on the Net Zero Nuclear Pavilion. We had Katie Huff speaking, and anyone in the nuclear industry who was sort of around then would have seen that and known who she was. So that's really nice to break down those walls between the 2 sides of COP.
That's perfect. So maybe let's talk about, you already mentioned some important figures supporting the nuclear energy in the climate context. So maybe let's talk about this, and let's see what was the coverage of nuclear energy during this COP. And what do we think about this? Alice, if you can maybe say something about this topic for us.
Sure. Yeah, I think it was, having been, as Richard mentioned, having been in the past 2 COPs, it was a massive presence. Not only in the Nuclear for Climate, we have 70 plus delegates in over there. And if you add everybody from Net Zero Nuclear and all the other nuclear groups, we see a massive presence. In the blue zone, we also had 4 different nuclear pavilions, which were one for fusion there, one for Nuclear for Climate, one for Net Zero Nuclear, and one for the IEA. So that on top of these 4 pavilions in the blue zone, with all the ones in the green zone, we see how nuclear was much more present at this event. And not only we saw the industry presence growing at this COP and making sure they were there to pledge for the expansion of nuclear, but much more heads of states were also openly advocating for the expansion of nuclear technology. So we are seeing a growth in the recognition of nuclear at this COP.
Thank you very much. And by the way, everybody who wants to ask a question, you're very welcome to start adding them to the chat, so that later we can focus on that in the Q&A part. I just got the information from our last speaker that he's entering right now his house, so hopefully he will join very soon. But let's continue. So we had several initiatives that our speakers were focusing on, and we already heard their names: Nuclear for Climate, Net Zero Nuclear. Let's maybe talk about the activities that were done by those initiatives in order to convey the message. What was the message? What were the activities that we were performing, and what was their result? Tiffany, if you can start for Nuclear for Climate.
Yeah, so for Nuclear for Climate, you can ask anyone who was involved in Nuclear for Climate. It was quite busy. We had a lot going on over the 2 weeks that we were at COP. So to start, I had mentioned that we had 2 different pavilions. Our main pavilion was in just a building in the blue zone. We had a lot of folks come and visit, and we used that as an opportunity to educate them about nuclear and answer questions. We also had a little mini booth that was outdoors, that was in a main thoroughfare that was really quite beneficial because it was right near an entrance to the green zone. So we caught a lot of people, and our volunteers were very outgoing and bringing people in and answering questions about nuclear energy, including in banana suits, which is also very engaging and eye-catching. So those were our two main activities. At our pavilion, we also hosted some events, but then we also participated, either hosted events at different pavilions or participated in events at pavilions. So for example, our co-lead this year, Hannah Fennick, she moderated a panel discussion at the Finland Pavilion to talk about nuclear waste. And this included the Finnish Minister of Environment and Climate Change. So it was quite well attended. And it was really interesting to hear their perspective on nuclear waste as they're opening up Onkalo soon, hopefully. Also, as a first, we had someone speaking at the Canadian Pavilion, Luke Dolenk. He was our youth lead this year for Nuclear for Climate. And he spoke on a panel about getting youth involved in climate action. And he was the only nuclear energy rep there. So that was great to have that perspective as well. If you're familiar with the game Megawatt, it was started by one of our volunteers. And it's a game that teaches you about electricity and energy grids and electricity grids. And it's a fun way to engage people and teach people about the impacts, the costs, and the benefits of different electricity generation sources of electricity. Excuse me, I'm a little sick. Unfortunately, I caught a flu after coming back from Dubai. So that was a great way to teach people about different electricity sources. There's also, if you look on Nuclear for Climate, Miguel, the founder of Megawatt, spoke with Isodope, and that's a great video as well. I also should mention at our pavilion, we had several ministers, several CEOs stop by our pavilion, and that was really great to have that sort of awareness and that sort of engagement at a really high level. Excuse me. We also what was one of the most exciting pieces for me was Nuclear for Climate hosted a UN action at the entrance of the Blue Zone. And this included nuclear advocates that were all there. It was a very large group, very well attended, from Sven, from Generation Atomic, from Jovenes Nuclearis, from American Nuclear Society, European Nuclear Society, African Young Generation Nuclear, Indian Youth Generation Society, and the International Youth Nuclear Congress. And if you're not familiar with UN actions, you have to apply in order to host. It's essentially like a little mini protest of sorts. And you are limited on where you can have those, and you have to have permission in order to do that. And there's actions going on all week. Excuse me, all COP. And it's right by the media area. So you get a good amount of media coverage. In fact, photos from our UN action were included in, I think, the Financial Times, which was exciting. If you didn't get to see that, head over to our social media channels and you can see a video of that. As well as we participated in several media interviews, including with Reuters and BBC Scotland. And then we had several of our volunteers going to non-nuclear events to ask questions about nuclear energy and talk to people about nuclear energy and just building our network and engaging with other groups. So like I mentioned, we were very busy. Nuclear for Climate was very busy during the 2 weeks at COP, but we were able to make a lot of great connections and I think a really big impact along with other nuclear advocates who were at COP this year.
That sounds just amazing. And another amazing thing is that we managed to have our poor Scottish guy who tried to arrive from the iced track, Saikat. Hi, great to have you. And maybe we jump straight to your presentation, maybe presentation of your person and your organization first. Tell us,
of course.
what is YOUNGO? What are you doing professionally and also in terms of your voluntary work?
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, panelists. So inviting me here. It's an honor. My name is Saikat Das. I'm doing my project management job, actually a day job for renewables offshore. I work offshore few days a year, and I also work onshore simultaneously. Also, I'm engaged with YOUNGO Energy Working Group, where YOUNGO is the children's and youth constituency of UNFCCC, where we just not interface with the energy related works. It's always into mix of energies. It's just not renewables, it's just not nuclears. How the capacity of the grid can be built up towards a financial and equitable tomorrow. And we have to also look ahead for the justify transition. For that, we have to also go with energy trilemma. So we always try to work in that regime, so that the better tomorrow should not be just on the papers, or it shouldn't be a higher ambition. It should be a scientific ambition, and we are supporting each other. And thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you very much. So maybe to add to the content that we already learned about nuclear energy and its achievements at COP, we can maybe jump straight to the rest of topics of COP that you, Saikat, are pretty knowledgeable about. And if you're able to share your presentation right now, maybe we can learn about this, and then we will continue the discussion about the different initiatives.
Of course. Let me share the screen first. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
So yes, I'll try to recapitulate all the informations in specific and stipulated period of time. First of all, as we move ahead, COP28's hot topics and their outcomes, right? So there were a lot of hot topics, really, like tripling up and doubling down. That means tripling up of renewables, also doubling up the efficiency from towards 2030. So tripling up means we are tripling the amount of renewables that we need for our justified transition, and doubling the efficiency from 2% to 4%. We will get back to each and every topic, line by line, as my reflection, how it should have been texted and how it seems to be texted. So loss and damage funds, it was also a hot topic. Global goal and adaptation. Global stock take, yes, of course, it was the first time for global stock take for the fossil fuels. Carbon markets, just transition work programs, mitigation work programs, adaptation funds, scaling climate finance, Article 6 and 6.4, cut in methane emissions, Santiago network of loss and damage, climate finance, and guidance for NDCs, which has to be put forward by the parties after 2 years. So there is a really heat up going on during the NDC guidance. So all of us should know that this is just not the topics that have been discussed in COP28. So there are literally loads of topics, if you can see from the screen. And if you see the status of COP negotiation always happens in a slow manner. It's not a just fast paced method, because it's a consensus. Everyone has to give their consensus on that. So in every general version of draft negotiation, there are a lot of drafts: first draft, second draft, and the final draft, right? So all the drafts, first of all, called as the element text, which is the initial draft concerning the global stock take, or building blocks that we say about any draft. So this year we saw global stock take was the first draft that has been submitted by submitted after Paris Agreement by the UNFCCC parties and of course UAE, COP28 UAE. So the first level was given as a building blocks because it was building for our future, right? And also targeting what we have done till now. If we see the initial text transformation, it's always a legal terminologies like, square brackets would be put up and those brackets can be changed by parties. Depends on what they want, depends on how they negotiate. And also there are also options like option A, option B, option C. All the options are differ in terms of how each wording should be. Sometimes the wordings are like really stringent. Some wordings are really having loopholes and some wordings have been kept in mind with the developing countries and developed countries altogether. So those are the options that have that are selected in a crescendo terms. So in actual negotiation, only 63% of all topics has been agreed upon or put forward in the text. So agreed and put forward is different story because agreed means exactly agreed upon the text that has been submitted by all the parties, and put forward on the text means that has been changed in certain manner, having some loopholes. That's it. So this is the process that we have to understand before moving ahead. What exactly we have to understand about the COP reflections. Next, so the first ever instant of COP where the stock take was generated, right? So the stock take this year has been generated where the political outcomes and implementation process has been with an increased ambition has been put forward with non-parties and of course the official parties, stakeholders. So this, what is global stock take? Global stock take is nothing just an analysis. What we have done till now and what we will be doing for reaching a global goal of net zero. So this is just an analysis of yourself, a SWOT analysis, we can say. Then we will move ahead with 2024, 2025 adaptation communications. And of course, again, after 5 years, we will reflect back what we have done with the text that has been put forward in COP28 with the global stock take. So that's the continuous process of 5 years, just as NDCs. So this is how I reflected the whole agenda of global stock takes, what has been covered. First of all, the transition away of fossil fuel. It was first time it was covered that fossil fuel is a really concerning element in our atmosphere, which has to be kept in target, right? But of course, in notable way, if you see the shift and how they're wording, how they put forward the words, the first draft, as we say, the building block was included as a phase out, right? So every draft consists of phase out where 200 countries put their wordings on it. But after that, it diluted because there are a lot of developing countries like India and China where the thermal power plants are still running by coal and fossil fuels. So they took the second wording as a phasing down. So phasing out means completely out of it. Phasing down means we reducing the effect and reducing the inclusion of fossil fuel into our energy system and production and generation. But at forefront, at the end, what has been covered? It was covered that transitioning away from fossil fuel. So that means we will transition away. It will not do immediately, but we will do it at the verge of 2050 by getting towards net zero. But there is no short-term logical deadlines. Like what is if it's 40% in a specific year, 60% in a specific year? No, there's just a transition away word which is been implemented just to make some loopholes. That's it. Secondly, tripling of renewables, as I already spoken about it. We really need the tripling of renewables. It was started from the G20 summit that was occurred in Asia. From there, all the leaders was consensus that, okay, we need a tripling of renewables, but of course, with the tripling of renewables, we also need the doubling of efficiencies. Everyone is praising about it, but no one is thinking the cost behind it, because there is no funds available in the climate finance right now. Because if we triple the renewables, that means the costing of logistics, the cost of production with the steels, the cost of transition phase away. Like we need a proper grids, smart grids, or capable grids which really need like renewables, and a lot of countries don't have that infrastructure till now. So we also have to think about it, because the finance, like according to the a whole outcome, the finance is like really doing bad in terms of everything, right? The international monetary fund, approximately 70 countries are right now in debt, like it's called the death crisis. And I don't know how they will first of all fix the debt, and then we'll go for the renewables. Because if you have 100 rupees, like say if you have 100 pounds in your pocket, you will not go for a new uniform or a new shopping. You will first of all go for your basic needs, your food, and your transportation and everything. And whatever will be left, you'll think over to save it, or to just save it for a rainy day or something. So the same thing is going on. We have to flow a lot of finance right now from normal, like developed countries to developing countries, or at least the technological transfer, which I can't see in the whole outcome. Again, what is the problem? See, if you can see the graph, like nearly 80% of the whole generation mix is from fossil fuel from the globally, right? So the transition, it gonna be really tough, but it has to be in a proper manner so that we can move ahead with 1.5 degrees all the time above pre-industrial level. If you can see in the bottom left, the graph, the flaring and fugitive emissions. Flaring means when we have explorations. So to just get rid of the gases, we like big companies, they flare the gas, they burn it, and that's having methane in it, and also like a lot of GHGs plus carbon dioxides. So flaring is going on everywhere. So if you can see the delta region of Africa, people are suffering from this flaring condition. So moving ahead with the loss and damage funds. Yes, funds, of course, it says funds, but how much we have gained from the fund? Because it has been started from like the disaster management in Sharm el Sheikh in COP27, and everyone pitched in that every developing countries will help the loss and damage vulnerable community. Because see, a lot of communities, a lot of people who are really in need of funds, they have to transit because of this climate disasters, and who haven't done anything for in their entire life, they have to suffer. So there should be a fund, and the and the fund was collected from all of the countries who have pitched in, but it was merely $700 million. That's it. It's supposed to be 580 billion as per now, including the 3.5 to 8% of inflations from 100 billion. So you can imagine, like it's not 0.2% also estimated. So I don't know how it will be affected, but we need a stringent policy on this loss and damage fund. Also, the World Bank has a financial target of 40 billion, which will be separated for 50% mitigation and 50% adaptation. That's a good news, but it's a news right now, so we don't know what will happen. But for this fund has been just said on, and but this fund will be circulated after a summit, after a committee summit will be happening in January with the World Bank. So the World Bank took the whole initiative of, dispersing this fund. Phase down of coal, amazing word, right? Because the coal was included in COP26 conference in Glasgow. Since then, there have been a lot of discussion, like how the coal has to be phased down, has to be phased, half, or what to do, because India, China, South Africa, global South nations are still really reliable on coal. So there's a highlight that the unabated coal can be used. What is unabated? That means the coal which generates CO2 can be captured and stored. So, and in fact, like literally right now, the experts and scientists are arguing about the efficiency of meeting those targets, because there is no such technology which is 100% CF factor, the capacity factor. So it's an unabated used word, but still now it has a lot of loophole according to me. adaptation, mitigation. So adaptation means we are adapting according to the situation, and mitigation is like, solving the root cause of the climate change. Why I give this definition? Because right now we are going to global goal of adaptation, and which was the really hot topic of this year's COP28. Traditionally, adaptation was neglected because, of course, like adaptation was said that it's the national target. It's a community-based target. It's a local target. It's not a global target because every community has to be adapted according to the situation they're facing. But this year, it has been framed and it has been, put forward that adaptation has to be maintained in the global text agenda, and it's not just a country problem; it's a global problem. So of course, a global goal of adaptation has been added, which is lacking sufficient targets. There's no targets in the language. There is no goal. There's no monetary mechanism, how the mechanism of money will be flowing. And of course, the financial objectives, there is zero financial objectives. So it just as a word right now. So we'll see what will happen in next 2 years. Cut in methane emissions. Of course, the methane is 80%, affecting the whole greenhouse gases and all the emissions. So of course, but methane's life is nearly about 10 years, but the CO2 remains hundreds of years in the atmosphere. But still, if we can manage to absorb the methane, we can do a lot better in terms of getting to 1.5, like keeping 1.5 alive. So right now, 80 times more warming is been done, but still the low hanging fruit is emission from methane, which has been covered. That's a good thing. That's really a good thing. Other important things, of course, they say that 43%, greenhouse global gas emission reduction has to be done by sustainable methods by 2030, 60% by 2035 with the level of 2019, and to go to net zero carbon dioxide emissions by 2050. That's a good one, of course, because before there was no proper target. There was always move ahead forward or net zero towards 2050, but right now they have given a proper target of 2050, which is a good news because they have a stringent timeline to be followed. Other outcomes, those are really good outcomes. I kept it for at the end because it will take a long time if I explain all of the things, but you should know what are the like few important outcomes. Scaling of climate finance, first time like in the history, it has been pledged that $30 billion dollars it has to be put forward into a new climate fund with the United States. So they don't have the mechanism right now. Of course, they will have the mechanism after the meeting with the World Bank in January, but still they have a policy that okay, $30 million dollars are going towards the climate fund. But this pledge officially still lacks of specific figures, no figures, no financial goals, no long-term finances. Of course, a gap highlights the need more for precise commitment. There is no commitment in the line. Is it exactly the same as 100 billion, which has been floated from Paris Agreement? Maybe or maybe not. Let's see with the moving ahead with more COPs. Carbon market, it needed to be put forward because a lot of carbon trading, carbon leakage is been seen in the decade right now. And if we can put forward a internal carbon pricing or external carbon pricing, CBAM, which is right now in the transition period from 2026, the CBAM means carbon mechanism, like which is put forward for the borders when we do some trading between countries. So there's a mechanism which EU has already been put forward. Hosting of COP29, yes, it was a big discussion because until like during the COP28, we didn't know where we are going to the next. So at least at the end, we know that we are going to Azerbaijan in Baku, and I hope I will see all of you in Baku for sure. And of course, the guidelines of NDCs, because after 2 years, the NDC has to be reformed and put forward for new goals and new targets. I think yes, I will not fry everyone's brain by a lot of information here. It's just small things that limitation of ambitions right now, according to the graph, we are on target, but 50% we need to work on it, and 50% we have to work on the indices. and I think 33% along with it we have achieved already. So more 60 to 70% has to go on, and let's see what we'll do. But the most important part is youth inclusion has to be followed, because right now if you see the whole advocacy and your inclusion of youth, everything changed within 2-3 years. Before that it was not changing in that fast rate. Just from the inclusion of youth, the conference of youth, the conference of parties, inclusion of 100 delegates for this climate initiatives, everything is changing right now. And also the global youth statement that we put forward with the YOUNGO, which condensed the demand of all over the globe's youth, what we need. And a lot of demands that has been put forward here was in the global youth statement, and I'm really proud of that we were a part of that statement. So yes, youth inclusion is really important. And again, thank you so much. Any questions, please throw at me, but also like connect with me in the LinkedIn if you want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saikat. A very enriching presentation. I think everybody will agree, and I already imagine many questions in people's heads and in mine as well. So I think with this very valuable knowledge that you passed us, we wrap up the part of the Blue Zone activities and initiatives and decisions. But before we go to the Q&A, maybe we can still stay in the part of the Green Zone. And Richard, if you can tell us a little bit about the initiative Net Zero Nuclear that was present and with its very rich agenda in Green Zone. What were some of the marking moments that you remember from there?
Yeah, so as mentioned, we have a pavilion in the Green Zone, and at the pavilion every day there'd be 3 or 4 panel discussions, and they were sort of a main activity for Net Zero Nuclear, a way to speak to the public in person, but also these panel discussions were filmed and photographed such that our advocates could post about them online on LinkedIn, Twitter, and further afield to reach a much wider international audience. And I think that's of additional social media content creation side is a big success that we've had. I think, yeah, there's been a few tweets that went out during COP. They got sort of 1 million engagements and sort of cumulatively, I think, sort of touched every corner of the world. And that's a big success for us. Outside of the Green Zone, one thing Net Zero Nuclear did is we went to the Baraka nuclear power plant out in sort of the desert of the UAE, and a couple of our advocates from Denmark managed to convince the Danish journalists to come on board, and they jumped on the bus with us and went all the way down to Baraka and filmed the nuclear power plant. And Denmark is a country that doesn't have any nuclear power stations. They've got a ban on it, and the public is sort of questioning whether that ban should live on or not. And to be able to see youth advocates at a power plant sort of explaining what's going on in all of the sort of amount of power it produces, that one nuclear power plant generates enough electricity for all of Denmark's needs. And that sort of content creation side was a huge success, to be able to reach those untapped audiences, especially in anti-nuclear countries like Denmark, Norway, Australia, Spain, Italy, big targets for us.
Yeah, I think that's an important thought, that the content creation during COP is a very important task, because how many people can join this conference in the end, right? Expensive business, very limited tickets. So this way, I imagine that you managed really to have people on board with you, even though they were following you from straight from their homes or from their phone screens. Thank you very much. And I think right now we can pass to the Q&A. I saw already several questions in chat, and I see Alice, you want to say something before?
Yeah, just inspired by Saikat's presentation. I think one of the outcomes that we need to mention on the nuclear side is that we had the 22 countries declaration of AAA nuclear until 2050 that happened during COP on December 2nd, which is the World Nuclear Energy Day. So that was a big thing. A lot of countries signing up for that. Some countries that are experienced on nuclear, some countries that are not, and they are looking to nuclear as part of their climate solutions and energy security. And we also had as an outcome for COP the historical mention of nuclear in the document, in the final document of COP, where when it mentions the need to accelerate zero and low carbon emissions, it clearly states nuclear is part of that. And that has never been done before on the stage of COP. So that really signals how the recognition of nuclear as one of the technologies that is part of the climate solution is changing, right? The world has finally recognized the need to expand the nuclear technology as a climate solution. So I think that can also be considered as a good outcome of this COP.
Yeah, for sure. And then maybe the next step, let's see in several years if we will see this tripling of nuclear capacity written in the text as other ambitions are already included in there. Thanks, Alice. And let's go to the first question that I see in the chat. This is the question for Saikat. Is it clear from what topics were not included what the focus will be for COP29? So I guess what are the first hot topics that we will already see for Baku?
I was fortunate enough to speak with someone from Oxford as a professor. He has been to COP from 2006, basically, every year. So I asked him the same question, like, what do you think about the open text or not being agreed on that? So he said, if you see a graphical or historical representation, right? So in Paris Agreement, the COP that happened during the COP15 Paris, then of course COP26 in COP 2021. So everything has a year lagged by 2 years, right? So every good decision lagged by 2 years. So he said that, for an example of UAE, COP28 UAE, something happened really good, but after 2 years, because in 22 it was not that kind of like good news for the climate advocates and all of us. So I think I can expect a lot of keen takes in Brazil. So yeah, let's hope for the best. Yeah, of course, like Baku will do a lot, but I'm a person with data and numbers. So the number says every 2 years. So let's see.
Let's all go to
Alice
Brazil.
already happy. Yeah, Alice, you can note down those will be the first things to work on for COP in Manaus.
Actually, the Brazil delegation at this COP was the second largest delegation after the Emirates one, because Brazil is really putting forth the "I'm back" sort of message to the climate discussion. So COP30 in Brazil was decided before COP29 was actually allocation was decided. So very much looking forward to receiving COP in Brazil in the Amazon region.
Yeah, of course, you can see the NDCs. So after 2 years, the NDC gonna be updated, and that's a huge thing to for every countries to say what they're gonna do and what's their task moving ahead. So I think we all are looking ahead to Brazil, but I'm really hoping some things at least has to be changed in Baku, and it will, as youth are always in front, so it will.
Yeah, talking about the youth, there's another question. How can nuclear advocates get involved in the pre-COP negotiation tracks, such as SB? I imagine that, so this is the question for you, Saikat, again, and you have specifically the youth angle, but maybe you can say something also in general.
So if I say about inclusion of text, right? So as we are dealing with the global youth statement, so I will give an example of global youth statement is really a good statement that put forward to the COP presidency, and this year I'm really proud that everyone is speaking about this global youth statement, because many texts were similar what has been asked for and what has been moved forward with the parties, right? So in global ill statement, we already put this highlighted the part of nuclear in 2 times, in a way of safeguarding, in a way of having a special mix of energies, keeping the base load alive, because we know that the base load is important. And also a developing few countries really need a proper nexus of energy, because they are also renewable energy, but the cost is not going down in a certain manner, in a dramatic manner. A lot of, see, if I speak economically, the market always acts as demand, supply, and price. And there is also a price called strike price for the energy mix and the producers of electricity. So the strike price is always depends on market needs and how government gives the subsidies, right? Everything is a mechanism, manner, is a framework. It takes time. So according to us, I think nuclear is also playing a good role in emphasizing towards the net zero. So we already put a text, and I think from next year, as already tripling of nuclear is on the talks and everyone is accepting nuclear. So maybe from the next year in the main text, we can see where I can see the building blocks can be put forward for the draft, and nuclear must be added, hopefully.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I see another question that asks about specifics of SMR and policies regarding nuclear. But maybe I will reformulate a little bit this question to still include the original elements. I imagine the question could be the tripling of nuclear capacity. What elements do we need to, let's say, take into account in realizing this big project? And question to my panelists, who would be interested to share your insights?
I can start. Yeah, so the SMRs is one of the very important tools of us getting to a decarbonized economy, not only for the potential on decarbonizing the electricity grid, but also the other sectors, right? The flexibility that they bring, not only with SMRs, but with microreactors as well. So there is a lot of discussions. Countries are already looking into it. During the Net Zero Summit, there were announcements of SMRs deployments in some countries. And it's, of course, licensing is an issue, especially because there is dozens of different designs in different stages of development, and also designs that we are not used to see being operating yet in the way they are modularized. So there is a lot of discussions on harmonization in the industry of licensing. There is a lot of discussion on how can we innovate on a business model as well, because when you look at leveraging microreactors or SMRs for other sectors than electricity, how can you make it in a way that it's feasible economically viable for the other industries to use. So there's still a lot of challenges to tackle on that area. But the NEA, Nuclear Energy Agency from OECD, launched as well during COP, SMR Accelerator initiative. I don't know if the name is correct. I'm probably not saying the correct title of this. So like there is the industry is looking together on how the deployment of these technologies can bring. And one thing that I believe it's very important to mention as well is we saw during this COP the other industries reaching out to nuclear. So I had the opportunity to talking with somebody from Google that was there looking for nuclear solutions for the data centers. I was able to talk to people from the aviation sector that was there discussing on how can I decarbonize airports and like the footprint of the airports. And they were all open to listen and understand how nuclear can be a part of that. So I think that push that is coming not only from internal nuclear side, but also from the need. The market is needing technologies that can support the decarbonization of their sectors, will help push us to getting together and making a decision. But this is definitely still a challenge that we need to sort it out and be innovative on the way we advanced on that.
Thank you, Alice, for that. And I propose to move to the last question, which is a perfect wrap-up, I think, which is what is your maybe personal or in the view of your initiative focus for COP29? Some personal insights, maybe Richard, please give us a quick look into.
Broadly, I'd like to see more countries sign up to triple nuclear by 2050, and for those advances to be made for that to be included in the proper COP text.
Thank you. Tiffany.
I would like stronger and more specific text for how we actually phase out, not just phase down fossil fuels. I think that I would like to see more plans, more specifics. I would love to have that be a focus of COP29.
Thank you. I think this is a wish that everybody is somehow having at the back of our heads.
It was an easy one. I knew it would be popular.
Yeah. Alice, go.
So I think I agree with what everybody already said, but being from the Global South, I would like to see more recognition on the need of loss and damage support. As Saikat mentioned, the amount that was given is not enough, not even close, to support the consequences of climate change that those countries are already facing, and also the recognition of financing to support the Global South for development and still in a clean energy way. So to give accessibility to these technologies to the Global South in that way, so the countries can develop, taking people out of energy poverty and still maintain the goal that we have, the climate goal of keeping 1.5 alive. So yeah, that's what I pursue at COP, in the next COP.
Thank you. Saikat?
I know that there's a lot of information over the internet and everywhere. Like really, people are talking about the consciousness, the reflection, how they felt, and what was the outcome. But one thing I agree is the text itself. The text has to be very clear all the time. But there is already so much content that we always negotiate about one word, like, it could be phase out or phase down, and one word can change the whole priorities and whole nexus, right? So, I really think that the COP negotiation should happen in a more resilient, robust, and including all of the observers, giving proper priority to all of the texts. And also we have to include the global South and global North. It's not just about transition, it's about justified transition. Few sectoral initiative that I spoke about around this COP28 was meaningful, of course, but I want to see some ambition, clarity, coverage of accountability, finances, and especially more reliable text on the table. So that's my goal for the next COP.
Guys, for some of us, Christmas is coming, so I really hope that this can be our Christmas wishes that will come true. With this question, I think this is the perfect moment to wrap up. And thank you very much for your insights that you shared. And to our public, please remember that all of our initiatives are annual ones, and we are going to be active also for COP29 and COP28, and hopefully until the net zero
SBS
is achieved. Exactly. So please follow us on social media and stay tuned for next activities in the climate space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Pleasure. It was a pleasure.